Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. If you've ever tried therapy, medication, or even every mindset hack that you ever thought of, but still feel like nothing is changing, what if you're treating the symptom but missing the root? Today's guest, Beatty Carmichael, says most mental, emotional, and even physical illness isn't just medical, it's spiritual. And once the spiritual root is gone, the pain often disappears, and it disappears fast. It may sound radical, but with a documented 90% success rate, you'll want to hear how this works. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Joe Bonnie. Welcome to the Good Vibe Studio, baby.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. So you spent 25 years in business before discovering this truth about spiritual roots and healing. What cracked your old worldview wide open and led you to believe that most diagnoses are actually misdiagnosed?
You want the candid answer?
Sure.
The candid answer is when God sent me to start casting demons out of people and they would manifest, and when they would leave, the issue that the person was having instantly disappeared. Then I realized a lot of these things had a spiritual root. And as I would just go pray for people, I would go out to places like Walmart and stuff and just walk up to people and ask if they need prayer. And when they had physical issues or mental issues from glaucoma or double hernias or joint pain, migraines, depression, things of that sort, 90% of the time, those issues instantly disappeared. And God was just kind of placed in my heart that it was the same thing happening with casting out demons, that it was a spiritual issue, that it was a spirit, a dark energy source of some sort that was leaving. And I started to put these things together and start to connect the dots. That's how it got here. It wasn't something I went looking for. It's something that God decided to show me because he had bigger plans for where he wanted it to go.
Did you ever felt kind of like pushed back from it, or you fell and leaned straight into it? Like you felt like you were called to do it, you started doing it, you've been praying with people, you start to see the results. Did you feel more inclined to do, like, to help more people, or did you kind of feel like, wait a minute, what's actually happening?
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was fun, right? Because what I was doing, I was seeing miracles, things that should not happen. And so I initially started it because it was fun, it was exciting, it was something different that very few people have ever seen, including me. And then over time, shortly over time, I really pressed in on it further because I realized it was making an impact in people's lives and that I had something to offer. So I wanted to make sure that whatever gifting or skill that God had given me, that I was using it in a way that really helped others. And so it was a big drive of being responsible with something that could impact others.
I love that. And I think so many times we like the rush of something that's fun and exciting, but then to have an impact and something to actually offer people that may not even know you have something to support them with or help them with, that like didn't ask for it, you kind of just brought it to them. That can be slightly radical. That can be kind of on a supernatural place. But then you have people that actually get healed. How are some of those people receiving the support? Are they just like, what is happening? What's going on? Or are they like, I'm really grateful for this and sending more people to you? Or like, how does the after help look like?
So they really weren't sending people to me because most of these at this time, I was literally just walking up to people at Walmart saying, hey, I'm out praying for people, anything you need prayer on. So it was very much of a out of the blue and pray for them, whatever it was. But if it was a healing related thing, that's when I would see God work. It was real interesting. It surprised me a lot of times. A few people got teary-eyed, but most of the people, they were going, "Oh, wow, great, gee, thank you," and they walked away. And uh, the ones that I got more response and deep emotional response from people simply for the fact that I prayed for them on something else. They have some issue in their life, something they're dealing with work or a loved one in the hospital, and they were more appreciative that I prayed for them for that than I would pray for them and they would be healed, by and large. And so that really kind of surprised me. And thinking back, I realized that a lot of times we live with issues in our lives and we learn just to live with it, and it's just part of life. But there are some things that are deeply emotional and concerning to us, and those things aren't necessarily healing for us. It may be for someone else. And that's the part that garnered greater emotional response from them. So, yeah, that's a really good question, but that's sort of what I experienced. It took me a while to grasp it and understand it, but so goes life.
It is, because sometimes we don't know what type of ministry we're called to do, what type of vessel we are in order to do good work to help others, especially people that you never knew that you were going to be willing to help. And it kind of makes me think about, first of all, this podcast, Beatty, like us being able to have this conversation, allowing people to know what is possible and to empower them to be on a healing journey of their choice, I think is phenomenal, because we chose to show up to have this conversation today and to be of value based on our experiences and our education and what's happening. But had those experiences never happened to us, we couldn't be a blessing or a vessel or impact to others. And so I'm grateful for that. I think when I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and 2 fibroids at the time of my surgery, it was a lot. Like, I didn't know what those diagnoses were. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I had a healthy life, so to speak, until those diagnoses came up. And it was like, okay, what do I need to change in my lifestyle to make sure I don't have these symptoms, to make sure I don't continue feeding into, the root of what all was happening. And I also said to myself, if I've experienced all of this and my pain wasn't on the high Richter scales as a lot of my counterparts that I was seeing who was experiencing debilitating pain every single day, living off of pain pills, 14 to 21 day periods. I didn't have that experience. Sometimes I didn't even have a period. And I was like, well, if I was blessed to have this type of experience, the least I can do is advocate and let them know that this pain is not normal, that the symptoms that, like you said before, things that they learn were just a part of life and just living with it, are not the way that you have to continue to live life. That too can be stopped. There can be some relief in there. And so I'm really glad that you said those things. And I appreciate you for even kind of walking us and introducing us to that aspect already so early in the conversation.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of things that people deal with and live with, and it's not a big deal for them. But then there are other things that they get to the point that they're desperate for help. Mm-hmm. And I teach as a volunteer at a women's addiction recovery center. And in that place, these women are desperate for help. They've been in and out of jail. They've been in and out of recovery centers. They've been in and out of relationships. A lot of them are on kind of the last straw in their life, trying to put things together, and the family has rejected them until they can get right and straighten up. And to help them is really important. And so they're very appreciative. I didn't see near that level of appreciation just people on the streets, people at Walmart, places like that. And I think it's that difference is until it's severe enough that they really want to do something about it, they need to do, then the appreciation is less. I remember, Jesus said one time many years back, Pharisees came to him and said, he was at a dinner with one of the Jewish Pharisees, a very legalistic person, and this prostitute comes and starts to kiss his feet or something like that, and pour oil over them. And the Pharisee gets really offended at that. And Jesus knew what he was thinking, so he said, "Simon, I got a question for you." He said, "Go ahead, teacher." He said, two servants owed a master money. One owed a lot, and one owed very little. And they were both forgiven their debt. Which one do you think will love the master the most? And he said, the one who owed a lot. He said, "That's correct." He said, "When I came here, you did not anoint my head with oil," which was the customary standard. "She's been anointing my feet with oil. You didn't give me water to wash my hands, and she's been washing my feet with her tears. You didn't give me the courtesy kiss of greeting, and she's been kissing my feet the whole time. She has sinned much, and she has been forgiven much, and he who has been forgiven much loves much." And he was just pushing back on him that sometimes it's when someone is at the end and someone comes in to help bring freedom to them, then that's where they're appreciated the most. And those that really think they're all perfect and upright and they don't need much, they have very little gratitude for whatever's given to them.
And I can definitely see exactly what you mean by that. And I hate that sometimes, Beatty, that it gets to a point where we are desperate for help. But I love that you said when they need it and they want it,
that's
when the change is truly there to help them get free from the thing that they need and they want freedom from. And I love it, because I'm starting to understand that the more you want to help people, they may want the help, but they're not at a place where they need the help. They're not desperate enough to say, now I'm ready to pay and pay attention. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get where I need to. And what I love the most about how you say you teach with women at the facility, what I love about it is they found a trusted adult, a safe space, someone who just wants to help them and want nothing from them. And sometimes I think that's a hard relationship for people to truly trust and embrace, because there's always a feeling that people want something from them or need something from them, or they have to prove something to them. And I'm just here to help. And I love to come here and serve you and provide you with support. And so I actually really love that aspect about how you're helping those women who need it and want it and to break free. And I know you were telling me before about one of the experiences with the ladies. And so we're going to get ready to get into that. But I wanted to let you all know. So if you are listening right now, I want you to know that if you are just tired of pushing through pain and wondering why nothing is working or why your energy is always low, then this message is for you. Inside of my current training, I am breaking down my 4-step lifestyle shift that helped me go from surviving stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, hormonal chaos, to reclaiming energy, peace, and alignment naturally. So in the show notes, click on the link, register for the next upcoming training. And now we're about to get back into this episode. So, Beatty, talk to us about the one young lady that was in your class session who had a headache and leg pain.
Yeah, so I noticed as I was teaching this class, in fact, it was the Prayer of Freedom class, which is what you see on my, if you're watching this video-wise, it's in my background. And the Prayer of Freedom is all about getting free of these chronic issues and persistent issues in your life. So this gal, she was rubbing her temple and rubbing her legs, and it looked like she really wasn't paying attention to me as I was teaching. So I actually stopped teaching. I stopped the class and said, "Excuse me, are you okay?" I mean, you could tell that she was really distracted. She says, "I've got this horrible headache and I've got this horrible pain in my legs." I said, "Okay, you want God to heal it?" And she said, "Well, yeah." So I led her into a very simplified version of this thing I call the Prayer of Freedom, which is a process that takes the directives of the ancient biblical text of how God tells us, if you want healing, here's how to pray. And it comes from a book in the Bible called James 5:16. So I led her to ask God if there was some spiritual root in her life that was the source of that pain. And if there was, to bring it to her mind, and something flashed in her mind. And then I directed her how to pray to simply nullify it, to turn it off, if you want to call it that. And then ask God to take this pain away. And the whole thing lasted maybe 3 minutes. It was very short. And all of the pain left. I said, so check it out. How does it feel? She said, she's checking out her legs. She's checking out her head. I don't have any pain. I say, good. That's exactly the way it always works. So then I go back to teaching, and I notice that she's not paying any attention still. She's just sitting there, just kind of this dumbfounded expression on her eyes. And she's looking down at her legs. She's starting to cry, and she's not paying any attention to me at all. And then she, after about 5 or 10 minutes, that she gets up and walks out of the room. And this is only, like halfway into a 1-hour class. So she didn't get anything from my teaching. She comes back at the end of class, and she's been crying, and she just came back and apologized and said, Mr. Carmichael, I apologize, I left. But she basically said, I've never experienced this before. I just felt so loved by God, I couldn't handle it. I've been out there crying this whole time. And I just thought that was really sweet. She apparently has had this pain for so many years that it so startled her that when she did what God said to do and how to request healing, that he actually healed her, because she'd been praying for years for him to take away this pain, and he never had. And then when I guided her in the prayer, the right way to pray on this, then God did. And it just so startled her, and it made her feel so loved by him. And that was the story of the women in my class at the Addiction Recovery Center.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I love that. Like, to really just feel loved by God and have that overwhelming feeling, but then to be able to have that simple prayer. Like, for me, I didn't even know that she had been praying for years and for so long for that pain to be taken away, and then to be led by you with that simple 3-step prayer.
Well, think of I just wanted to, didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to, so think about this. This is, and especially for our listeners, this is something that's really important. Most people, when they have major issues in their life, even if they're not religious, they still pray. They pray to some creator, some universal consciousness or something. And because they know that whoever or whatever that thing is, that creator has the ability to bring healing. So all of these ladies in my class have been praying for freedom. And they've been praying for freedom from addictions, freedom from their mental illnesses, freedom for their loved ones that are always in problem situations. And they've gotten to the point, as so many people do, well, I prayed and it doesn't work, right? And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and God just doesn't answer my prayers. And then when I try to tell people that there's a right way and a wrong way to pray, or there's a right way to pray more effectively, I should say. And a lot of times, especially the religious people, push back and say, that's not true. God is a big God. He knows what we're asking for, so it doesn't take some special process that you pray for him to answer your prayer. And I go, well then, why does the Bible say that the prayers of a righteous person affect much? Meaning that the prayers of an unrighteous person, the same prayers, won't affect anything. Why does the Bible say if you go and produce fruit, then you can ask my Father for anything and he'll give it to you? Which means if you're not producing fruit, you can ask the Father for things and he won't give it to you. You start to see this pattern throughout the Bible that not all people's prayers are the same, even if they're praying for the same thing. And one of the things I find is that there's the process of what God is looking for. It says very clearly in this passage in the Bible, it says, if you want to be healed, it says it this way, confess your sins, or confess that what you did was wrong, and then you'll be healed. And so when, with this lady at the Addiction Recovery Center, this is actually the basis of the prayer of freedom that I've been seeing, 90% success rate in people being healed of all kinds of things. The basis of what I had to pray was this: God, if there's a spiritual root, something I've done, or someone I need to forgive, then let me know. And then I guided her into how to say, I confess it was wrong, or I forgive that person. And then
can you kind of break down what you mean by that? Like, what clues point to an actual spiritual root?
It's hard to say because it mimics. Let me give you a couple of examples.
Okay.
Rheumatoid arthritis is known to be an immune deficiency issue of some sort. So that's a medical disease. But yet, if it's a spiritual root, it's actually a spiritual torment manifesting as that. So there was another lady at the Addiction Recovery Center that her rheumatoid arthritis was flaring up, and she asked if I would pray with her. So as I did, God prompted me to ask if she had unforgiveness for anyone. She said yes, and so I led her to forgive. God, I forgive my sister. And within an hour, the arthritis pain was completely gone. Then, watch this. This is the point I'm making. 4 weeks later, she goes back to the doctor. He retests her and says, and by the way, she's been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis for almost 20 years. So he retested her and said, you have no arthritis in your body, and your body shows no signs of ever having had arthritis. So now you have to ask the question, was that diagnosis real? Was it really rheumatoid arthritis, or was it a spiritual entity manifesting as rheumatoid arthritis? Another example is neuropathy, as we're on just the topic of unforgiveness. I was doing a show just a couple of days ago. The host had neuropathy in her legs. 15 years. It had excruciating pain. On a 0 to 10, it was an 8. And so I guided her in this. She forgave someone, and it instantly left. So was it really neuropathy, which is a medical condition, or was it something that was masquerading as neuropathy? And so where I'm going when you ask the question, how do you know if something has a spiritual root or not? I find that it's hard to tell specifically, but here's the pattern. Anytime you're living with something persistent, year over year over year over year, whether it's a pain in your body, anxiety or depression, an attitude like you're constantly bickering with your loved ones and you don't know why everything just blows up all the time. You keep losing a job like every 6 months. Anything that's a pattern, almost always those patterns have a spiritual root. And it takes no cost and no detriment, no risk to try it as a spiritual root. So that's why I suggest with people, hey, first step, try the prayer of freedom. Because a lot of times, even in the medical community, a doctor will say, I think you've got this. Based on your symptoms, I think it's this. So let's try this therapy. And if it works, then I know that's what it was, because this always works on that issue. So they tried this certain therapy, a medicine or something, and it doesn't work. You say, okay, it wasn't that, it must be something else. So then they try a different therapy, and based on the therapy that works, it denotes what type of issue it really was. That's what I'm finding. We diagnose someone with the symptom of anxiety or bipolar disorder, or the symptom of glaucoma, but is it really that? Or is it a spiritual thing manifesting as that? And so by going through the prayer of freedom, what's happening is I'm finding about 90% of those things have a spiritual root. But you can't tell it from the outside. You have to go through the therapy, if you want to call it that, this approach to prayer, and see what happens. But it's been successful enough that it's really blown my mind how many things we live with that are actually spiritual roots. In fact, this is interesting. My father-in-law he's deceased now by 20 years, but he was an internist for 50 years. And back then, the doctors said that health is based on three foundations. You've got mental, physical, and spiritual. And based on your symptoms, they would ask you questions in those three categories and usually come up with a pretty good diagnosis. But today, medical science has taken out the spiritual. They say health is based on mental or physical. And so what's happening is there's a lot of mixed diagnosis of the problem. It's easy to diagnose the symptom. I've got a cough. Okay, so I can diagnose, you got a cough. Hey, brilliant, now solve it. Well, I don't know what it is. It could be pneumonia, could be allergies, could be common cold. So you really haven't diagnosed me, you've only diagnosed the symptom. Diagnose the root. And you know if they got the root right because the therapy will solve it. So when I'm diagnosed with anxiety, so they give me some anxiety medicine, then I start to get depressed. Oh, wow, you got depression. So then they give me a depression medicine, and now I can't sleep. Oh, well, you have sleep problems, so they give me nothing. They're causing all these problems, but nothing's being fixed because it was a wrong diagnosis. They got the symptom right, but it's on the spiritual side. Long answer. Sorry for getting winded on that.
No. I took great notes, so I don't know if they're taking good notes too. Now I know the difference between health and medical when it comes to how they had a foundation in back in the day with the mental, the physical, and spiritual, which really does treat the whole person and takes the whole person in account versus medical just being mental and physical. But I also agree with you about not trying to treat the root. I mean, treat the symptom, but get to the root.
Get to the root.
So I definitely understand what you meant by it. I love that you broke down the examples about arthritis and neuropathy, and really understanding that it might be something that's basically common amongst these people, or within these people who have been misdiagnosed or potentially have this diagnosis, could just be a root of unforgiveness. But I also believe, Beatty, that it takes time and a process to truly uncover what that root is, what that emotional tie, that spiritual tie might be. If you're always accustomed to just keep going and never looking within to sit with it, to really figure that part out. And so, like, how does spiritual healing differ from belief-based or mindset work?
It has zero to do with either one of those. The way it's different. So at the beginning of the show, I commented I started casting out spirits, demons, right? So a demon spirit, and not everything is demonic, but this shows the spiritual root of how things occur. Real quickly, a demonic spirit is an evil spirit that will inhabit someone, okay? And it's an evil spirit that actually has a mind, will, and emotion, and it's there to destroy. It says the Bible says the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus came that we might have life and have it abundantly. So the only way to get the abundant life is to get rid of the thief that's stealing, killing, and destroying. When you do a deliverance, the way I was doing it is God would have a demon spirit identify itself. Let's say they give themselves names. So let's say this one is Marcus. And I remember one guy, his name is Josh. He was always in despair. And that's why he asked me to come help him. He's 32 years old. And the first demon that came up was a demon named Seth. And I said, Seth, what is your legal right to be there? He said, Josh played with a Ouija board at 7 years old. So I go to Josh, repent to playing with this. Say, I confess it was wrong. So he said, I confess it was wrong. Go back to Seth. Do you have a right to remain? No. So you get him out. And so what you see is this process is you're dealing with an entity. It's some people call it a dark energy. Some people call it a spirit. It's all kinds of different things. You have a demon spirit. You have an amplifying spirit. Like an amplifier, people will recognize this. You get angry, and now you're just angry all the time. You can't figure out why you're always angry. It's because there's a spirit that just amplifies anger, and it keeps you angry. Addictions are very much it. A spirit of addiction amplifies your addiction for drugs, sex, pornography, gambling, alcohol, whatever it is, cigarettes, vaping. And it keeps it amplified where you can't stop. And so it has nothing to do with your mind, nothing to do with your thinking. It has everything to do with the fact that we violated one of God's standards one of what the Bible calls sin. But sin isn't what, it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I did something really bad. Sin is simply missing the mark. It's like I tell my child, hey, put my book back on the table, and he puts it on the bed. I'm not upset, but he missed the mark. Okay? Technically, that's kind of what sin is. And so when we sin, it opens the door for some of these spirits to come in and bring havoc into our lives. Unforgiveness is a big one. Sex outside of marriage is a huge one. And for our listeners, if you've ever slept with someone and now you become like them, or you slept with someone and they were a controlling person, and even now that they're out of your life, it still feels like they're controlling you all the time, it's because it's a spiritual entity. One of the shows I did, the host was suffering with STDs. And we were talking privately off the show. And I said, well, it sounds like just a spiritual torment. You want to get rid of it? She said, well, yeah. Okay, well, let me just lead you. We just led her in a short prayer. And we did the show. This was a discovery call before the show. We did the show like a month later. And she was mentioning on the show, I have this chronic disease I've had for years. Beatty led me through this prayer, and it's totally gone. It's never flamed back up. And what it was it wasn't a sexually transmitted disease. That's the doctor's version. Technically, it's probably a sexually transmitted demon, because it's a spiritual transmission. There's no safe sex. And this is why if you sleep with someone, and let's say they have depression, and all of a sudden you find yourself getting depressed all the time. Or you sleep with someone who's an addict, and now you find yourself having an urge of these type of things, or anything like that. What's happening is that tormenting spirit that's in their life now multiplies and is in your life as well through the act of sex outside of marriage. Then another thing is the occult. The occult is playing with a Ouija board, doing seances, doing anything that's kind of on the dark side of things. And that opens up the door to these things as well. So none of these have to do with, I need to change my mindset. I need to think hard about, just working in my mind, and my mind will overcome these issues. What's happened is each of these three things is, and I've identified about 18 different categories that open these doors. And so once we open the door in the spiritual side of our life, then these spirits will come in, and they manifest in some way in our life that takes away the abundance and the joy of our life. So you're asking people, the time, how long this takes, and it takes a little bit of time. It actually doesn't. If you go to my website, this is real interesting. If you were to look on, so I have a website, you'll see my name on the screen, but it's Beatty Carmichael. If you go to beattycarmichael.com, on the link for Changing Lives, you'll see some live demonstrations. Someone with neuropathy, someone with chronic knee pain from a football injury 25 years ago, someone suffering with heavy anxiety and depression from 26 years ago. All of those disappear in less than 5 or 6 minutes. And so it's not that this takes time. This happens instantly once you get the root out. And that root is that spiritual thing in our lives that's allowed that tormenting spirit in. Because once you undo the root, the legal right, that spirit leaves, and whatever that torment was goes with it. And as far as time to make this happen, in the back of my book, I have this. I identified about 18 different categories where these things occur, like unforgiveness, or sexual sin, or generational sins. You'll see things coming down generationally. You have dealing in the occult, things called word curses or idolatry. All of these are things that open the doors to these legal rights. So what this is, and this is how I do it at the Addiction Recovery Center. I tested this. I had everyone make a list of all the issues they're dealing with, go through this process, and then regrade that list on the intensity level. And 87% of those ladies had everything disappear off their list. And all they were doing is they made a list through this worksheet of these open doors, the things that they have done in their life. And then they prayed through the simple prayer process that turns off those legal rights and nullifies it. And when they did, it all disappeared. So this doesn't take long time. It's not like long-term change your thinking or anything like that. It's it's really like you flip a switch, you get these spirits in, you turn it off, the spirits leave, and it's pretty much instantaneous. I've seen the easy things that usually go within like anywhere from 5 to 12 minutes. Everything from anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression, suicidal thoughts, to arthritis pain and glaucoma, cataracts and hernia, like hernias, degenerative discs, all kinds of migraines, all kinds of asthma and allergies. Those are the things that when they're responsive, not everything has a spiritual root, but if it's a spiritual root, you know pretty quickly because it leaves instantly. Things that take a longer time, ADHD, that takes longer. I've seen sleep apnea take probably about a week because then the guy gives away his machine. Type 2 diabetes took 3 or 4 months, I think. So there are different things that take longer, but most of the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis tend to disappear almost immediately as soon as you nullify that spiritual root. And that's what I'm finding with my class, is people are just making their list of stuff. Things are just disappearing out of their lives. One lady, she's been smoking for years. She turned to vaping about 2 years ago. She couldn't stop. And I was telling her, we always go back to the beginning, whenever it started, and you nullify it there. So she did. She woke up the next morning, never vaped ever again. That was 2 weeks ago. She has no urges for it. So this is something she couldn't stop. The doctors say it's an addiction, but it's a spirit. And simply by going back to where it began and nullifying it, she has no urge for it at all. She's throwing it away.
And I like that you broke that down. And something that I got the pleasure of doing is actually hearing Beatty talk about a little bit more of the examples prior to our recording. But something else that he brought into the picture was his daughter experiencing night terrors and being able to get to a point. So, okay, where did you first experience it? And it was after watching a certain show. And he used the same process with her, and she no longer has the night terror. So I really appreciate you breaking it down, Beatty, based on your experience, what you've seen, how to basically identify. And I love that you're taking these women through listing the issues and the experiences of when they open that door, and then rating the intensity of how they how those experiences make them feel, and then leading them through those steps. I just had a curious question because, you say, do you want me to help you with that? Or do you want that healed? Do you want that addressed? Have you ever had anyone say no?
No, but it's a funny question to ask. And the way I actually came up with it is back when I had this gift of healing where I would just pray for people myself and they would be instantly healed. I was at Chick-fil-A and this big old black dude comes in. He's probably 6'3", 300 pound, all muscle. Comes in with his wife and his 3 teenage kids. And he's on crutches and his left knee is bandaged up. You could tell he's in pain and he slides down in the booth while the wife orders the food. So I leaned over to him and said, "What happened to you?" He said, "Well, I'm a tree cutter, and I was cutting trees on the ground, and I turned to go, and my foot got caught, and he ripped his ligaments in his knees." And it was apparently pretty recent. I said, "Does it hurt?" He said, "Oh, yeah," just this pain in his eyes. I said, "Do you want God to heal it?" And he said, "Well, I know God can." I said, "That's not what I asked." I said, "Do you want him to?" Because there's a difference between do you want God to heal it versus do you think God can? And he said, yes. And he didn't know where this was going. I said, "Great, swing out your knee and let me pray for it." And he was kind of reluctant. He said, I'm 5'8", 155 pounds, so I'm half his size. And so he did, and his teenage kids were watching, and the wife was watching. What's this little white dude doing? Talking to my husband or dad, and what's going on? And so I just put my hand on the knee and I said, "Lord, thank you for loving this guy, and ask that you take all this pain away. In Jesus' name, knee be healed." I said, "Okay, check it out." I mean, literally, it's that fast. Check it out. He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, stand up and check it out." So he gets his crutches and he stands up. He said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Well, what's up?" He said, "It's gone from a 10 to a 4. I said, "Fantastic. That means you're going to walk out of here carrying your crutches." So I said, "Sit back down. Let me pray for you again." So he sits back down. I put my hand on his knee again and I say, in Jesus' name, go all the way out. Pain be gone. And I said, now check it out. So he stands up and he holds his crutches up like this, holding them off the ground. And he's walking normally. No pain. I said, come on, man, do a deep knee bend. Test it all the way out. So he goes all the way down, all the way back up. No pain. And so I left before they left, but he and his wife, their kids, were just kind of talking over there, trying to, I know he was startled. For me, it was kind of cool. It was a fun thing to watch. But he carried those crutches out, never using them again. And so that's why I start asking, well, you want God to heal it? Because it's kind of a funny way to get into, I can help you. But it's just more fun for me to say, well, you want God to heal it? Well, yeah. Okay, well, let me just lead you. It's no big deal. There was a lady in my class today. She fell down the stairs a week ago. She sprained the wrist in her ankle, in her wrist. And it was still hurting, and it was very sensitive. She didn't have much motion in there. I said, well, you want God to heal it? She said, yeah. Okay, well, let's just see if it has a spiritual root, this will work. And I led her to the same process that I led the other lady in. And all the pain went, and she has full range of motion. It happens like that so frequently that it's like.
So right. Knowing that there was a true cause to the injury, let's say the woodcutter, let's say, I fell. How much of that initial activity that caused the injury to heal, to know then that there's a spiritual root to it, to be able to be something that can be healed through prayer.
So this is one of those things that I don't know that it was. And I told her, I don't know if this will work because I don't know if there was a spiritual root to the accident. But if there was a spiritual root to the accident, this will help. And so this is where, for me, I'm always testing. I don't know the right answer. It's like a guy I was talking to. I saw him pray for someone who'd been in a wheelchair for years, and she got out of the wheelchair, totally healed. And I was asking him, did you know God was going to heal her? He said, no. But he heals a lot of people. I don't know that he's going to or not, so I might as well just try and see what happens. Right? I don't know if it's a spiritual root or not, but let's just try and see what happens. And if it is a spiritual root, then what's going to happen is they're going to be healed. And that's how.
Have you ever had any experiences with people with endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, or fibroids? Have you ever been able to experience helping these women? And if so, were you able to identify any common themes when it comes to spiritual roots?
Yeah, so the spirit, let me answer. I don't know specifically on your question because a lot of times they don't give me medical diagnosed names. Like I remember one lady at Walmart.
If I was to change the medical name and say like pelvic pain, long-term bleeding, bloating, fatigue.
Yeah, I say that type of stuff. That was, you want God to heal it? And almost all the times it would, because see what happens is doctors give labels to something so they can put them in categories. But just like, think about this, cancer, okay? So we have lung cancer, we have kidney cancer, we got
pancreatic
cancer, we got eye cancer, we got brain cancer, all these cancers. But in the final analysis, all the cancer is your cells becoming bad. And there's a lot of people that are healing cancer simply through diet, going back to raw diets and giving your body what it needs to actually fight it. So rather than saying, well, the lung cancer is different than a, prostate cancer or a breast cancer, it's cancer, okay? It's manifesting different ways. The same thing with the spiritual roots. Watch this. Unforgiveness, I've seen it manifest as blinded eyes, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, allergies, neuropathy, and the only thing they have in common is the root was unforgiveness. And so what the way the Bible says is this way. There's a passage in Matthew 18 called the parable of the unmerciful servant. And the short storyline, a king has two servants that has one servant that owes him a lot of money. The servant can't pay, so the king forgives him. like a lot of money, like $20 billion in today's numbers. So then that servant, he's free now. He goes to one of his little servants who owes him $10,000 and says, pay me. And the guy can't pay him back. He said, well, I'm going to throw you into prison until you pay. So the king gets upset at the big servant and says, you unmerciful servant, you wicked man, I'm going to throw you into the dungeon to be tortured until you pay your $20 billion in full. And here's what happens. To be tortured is a Greek word. The root of it means to, basanizo is the Greek word. It's used 12 times in the New Testament. And it's used in 3 different categories. One is a physical malady, like lameness or your eye doesn't work. The other way is a mental anguish, like anxiety or depression. And the third way it's used is as physical pain. In other words, torment is torment regardless of how it manifests in your life. And so if we open the door to a tormenting spirit because we have violated what God said to do or not to do, we've sinned against him in some capacity, that's a big enough sin that allows us in, then you can't diagnose it simply by the symptom of what the torment is, because it manifests in all kinds of different ways. So what you do is you go through the simple process that the step-by-step guide I put in my book, and make a list of just these things that God brings to your mind, that areas that you have maybe violated his word, and then you pray through it to nullify those legal rights and see what happens in almost every time. In fact, can I read you a short thank you note from one of these ladies?
You sure can. And I kind of wanted you to get into, because you talked about the neuropathy, you talked about different diagnoses and the doctor's terms. And I kind of wanted you to go into the difference from those specialties and a spiritual root. And I know we kind of talked about that. We talked about their specialties for a reason, but then their spiritual root. So I kind of wanted you to kind of go in there, but you can definitely read a thank you note for this, and then we'll do a quick.
So this will show you the breadth of these issues. So this is one of the ladies at the Addiction Recovery Center. She said, I want to thank you for the prayer of freedom. It has changed my life. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was really tough. She was abusive, and she and my stepdad would drink and get into lots of fights. By the time I was in 7th grade, she said she didn't want anything to do with me, and she left. Can you imagine that as a 7th grader? That's when life began spiraling downward. By 16 years old, I was having sex with lots of boys and started getting into drugs. That was just over 10 years ago. Before doing this prayer, I was addicted to heroin and fentanyl and meth. I had a lot of worry and stress and anxiety. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8. I've had constant allergies and sinus headaches for years, migraines 5 out of 7 days a week, and a super heavy feeling like I was carrying around an overweight backpack every day. Life has really been difficult. So here's the picture I want you to get. All kinds of things going on in her life. Not one single pattern, just lots of problems. And then she continues. But the prayer of freedom and repenting changed everything. Literally, everything is gone. No more sinus issues, all gone. No more headaches and migraines, all gone. No more heaviness, it's all gone. No more anxiety or stress or worries. Literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've all gone to 0. Even my addictions have gone down to 0. I don't want drugs anymore. I have no urges for them anymore. And even the thought of any drug disgusts me. It's all gone. So what this shows is, regardless of the medical diagnosis, the root of all of these was unrepented sin, because the only thing she did through the prayer of freedom is taking those 18 categories. She just made a list of things in her life and things that may be coming down from her family, her parents, because sometimes these go generationally. And then, using this approach in prayer, she basically confessed those things were wrong. And in that process, all of these issues disappeared. So when you look at a doctor-diagnosed issue, you can't always believe that it is that issue. Like my son has a old Acura outside, a little sports car. And if I were to take a Ferrari body and stick it on top of that Acura, you and I would diagnose it, that's a Ferrari. I know a Ferrari when I see one, right? And then I said, well, go look under the hood. So you look under the hood, it's a, nope, not a Ferrari. But from the outside, it looks like a Ferrari. And when you're a doctor and you're only diagnosing with two categories, it's either mental or physical, then the diagnosis will always be it's this symptom, and this symptom, it's either incurable because we don't know what's causing it, or we have a solution to cure it. What they're missing is the third leg of that stool that makes it stand, and that is the spiritual. And if you can get that spiritual going and use the spiritual as part of the diagnosis, you're not sure which it is. It's either mental, physical, or spiritual. But the therapy determines what the cause is, because it's the therapy that's focused on that cause. So if I use a medical therapy and it doesn't work, like medicine and drugs, let's say some mental health issue, then that wasn't it. So then I go to mental therapy, a psychotherapist, and I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to tell the psychologist all my worries, and he's going to try to help me through it, and that doesn't change it. So it wasn't mental. Then I try a spiritual therapy of saying, Lord, let me make a list of these things in this prayer of freedom book and pray through this thing, and it disappears, and you go, oh, it must have been spiritual. You can't diagnose it otherwise. You got to get underneath the hood. But this is so simple and fast. I always recommend people try this first. Let me share something else this does. This works with relationship. Anytime you have, like I have a friend, and he's my age. He has an adult son, about 30 years old. And for the last 15 years, their relationship has been horrible. They get together for family like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and always blows up in these heavy, big fights, yelling and screaming. And I told my friend, Johnny, I said, Johnny, it sounds like a spiritual issue, a spiritual root. And by the way, interesting, a loved one can usually do much of this on behalf of someone else. So I said, let me guide you into a simple process with this to pray over your son, because it sounds like a spiritual root in your son that's driving this. So he did. A couple of weeks later, they had I think it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, and I texted him and said, how did things go? He said, not a single fight. It was the most peaceful time we've had in 15 years. They've gotten back more and more times over family vacations, and it's all gone. All of the anger and temper and anxiety and fighting is all gone. Why? Because it was a spiritual root. And that's what this does, and it takes very little time. It just takes understanding there's something there. Let's go through this process.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Beatty, for walking us through it. I took some good notes too. And I really love the fact that you really hit on, even with the cancer, seeing people being able to reverse it by going on a raw plant-based diet, like really just getting to the cellular root to create new cells, healthy cells, and just knowing that they're taking a different pathway versus the medical side, if that's the way, that people choose. Because again, it's your healing, it's your journey, you own it, and you embrace it. We're just telling you based on our experiences what has been happening or what could potentially happen, because it's happened for others or it happened for ourselves. So I really appreciate that. I wonder why, because it seems as though if the medical system used to include spiritual, then that means they must have been trained in at least seeing certain things at some point in time. So like what made them kind of get away from it? It's just my wondering. And what make them get back to it? Because I know we're seeing a lot more holistic routes, holistic alternatives, and people getting in that space. And I don't know if that's now the new arena to be able to bring in some of that spiritual elements and natural elements versus what we're seeing now with just the physical and mental and going the medicine route. So it's just my wondering, but we're going to get into. Go ahead.
I've got a quick thought.
Okay.
In the 1940s or 1930s, there was a dentist that had uncovered a process of using, he called it a metabolic approach to cancer therapy, using raw foods and stuff. And the medical science wouldn't recognize him because he was quackery, right? He wasn't a medical doctor. He was a vet or a dentist or something. So he got this medical scientist and doctor to look at his files, and that guy started to apply this, and he started to create these dietary approaches and finding and helping people get rid of things like pancreatic cancer that has a 6-month life expectancy, people living 20 and 30 years after going through this, and all of this. But what happens is the medical community prefers pharmaceuticals, and the big pharma has big money, and they prefer science over natural, because we've gone away from it could be easy, it must be complex. And I think what's happening right now is everyone's revolting because they realize I'm taking more drugs and nothing's happening. We're the most advanced scientific medical nation in the world, and we're like, what, number 50 or 60 on the health list because we have the worst health. Something's wrong. I think that's why everyone's pushing back toward alternative health. And maybe there's a resurgency. Hopefully my book, The Prayer of Freedom, will move people into a spiritual resurgency, back into what actually works, realizing that medicine can't solve everything, but God can.
I love it. Thank you for breaking that down, Beatty. And most importantly, talking about foods and that metabolic approach when it comes to that. So are you tired of reading every label at the grocery store just to end up with any old plant-based product or overly processed foods that still leave you bloated, sluggish, or stuck in a cycle of inflammation? My plant-based alternative guide makes it easy. Inside, I share go-to clean swaps for everyday foods, from snacks to sauces. But most importantly, I'm educating you on the functional nutritional benefits of certain grains, vegetables, fruits, and then giving you recipes to inspire you to own your own journey that helps support hormone health, reduce inflammation, and still taste good. So go ahead, get into the show notes, click the link, go to 4vibrations.com and grab your plant-based alternative guide. And so, Beatty, we're getting ready to get into what I call Vitality Sparks, another name for the quick fire round. All right, so here we go. Short, powerful answers, no overthinking, just what flows from the heart. What's a lie about mental health or healing that you wish more people would unlearn?
That it's incurable and that it's mental or chemical.
What's one root issue you see keeping people stuck?
Unforgiveness is a big one, not on mental health, but on most other things.
What's your favorite part of witnessing someone's breakthrough?
I love it when they're unexpectedly healed and then they break down and cry.
What's a simple prayer or phrase someone can say tonight to begin releasing emotional weight?
God, I forgive so-and-so.
What gives you the most hope right now?
That so many people are seeing results from this, that there's hope that we can actually get back to normal.
I love it. So last two signature show questions. Give some advice to the girl dads, the father figures, the role models, the partners and spouses of those dealing with heavy, painful periods, pelvic pain, fertility issues, or concern. How could they better be supportive in this process?
So a lot of this they can actually go through on behalf of someone. I put this is chapter 14 or 15 in my book, that once as you go through this, because it's a spiritual issue, you can turn off these spiritual doors that are allowing torments into your life. You can also turn them off in someone else's life. So if you have a loved one, a spouse, a partner, a child, or a parent that's going through these type of things, you can go through and do a lot. I don't know if it'll be as complete, but you can do a lot in paving the way to bringing healing to them. And then, obviously, if they're open to it and will do it, I would give them a copy of the book and let them go through the full thing, because the whole book is set up as a do-it-yourself guide. The first half explains what's going on, and then the second part is how do you get free and how do you help others get free.
Thank you. So what one paved the way to help bring the healing. And then number 2, get the Prayer of Freedom book. All right, last question, Beatty. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would y'all eat?
Besides Jesus, if I did with him, it'd probably be bread and wine. Um, Besides him, probably I would say maybe the Apostle John, or maybe Elijah, or Abraham. That's kind of where I focus on because those are some pretty major historical figures that have done a lot.
All right. And y'all would eat what again?
Well, back then I guess it was bread and wine. So
Gotcha. Bread and wine. All right, Beatty. Let everybody know where they can find you and where they could get the Prayer of
yeah.
Freedom book.
So best place to get the prayer of freedom because there are a lot of versions of prayers and freedoms out there. Just go to my website, theprayeroffreedombook.com. There's some free stuff there. Great videos if you want to check it out more. And then there's a button to buy it directly through Amazon there. It'll take you straight to the correct page. If you want to learn more about me, my website, BeattyCarmichael.com, is the best place to go. It tells about me, the shows, the content I do, real live demonstrations if you want to see how this works, and also how you to reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you, Beatty. Thank you for being an amazing guest on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Y'all, if you've been listening and thinking, that's me. I'm tired of guessing, tired of pushing through the pain, and I know I need something deeper than symptom management. This is exactly why I created my coaching framework, the M to the third degree healing empowerment formula rooted in mindset, mindful eating, and movement. It's the same approach I use to helping me survive stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and fibroids, to reclaiming energy, healing my cycle, and finally living in alignment. It's all about lifestyle changes, doing things differently, releasing things, eliminating and minimizing stress, emotions, things that you should not leave and allow to be stored in your body. So if you're ready to start healing, click the links in the show notes so we can vibe. Y'all, it's another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast with your healthy habits and lifestyle coach, Giovanni. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.